Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. Today is episode 4 of How to Be Ethereal. Finally, I'm really sorry that it took such a long time. I just really wanted to make sure that this video was perfect. I really don't want to put out any more content that is subpar. So in the past, I had a video strictly for indifference, but now it's time to talk about its counterpart, grace. In the beauty bootcamp for this series, I talked about how indifference and grace were the cornerstones of beauty and seduction and how to be ethereal. So, in this video, it's time to dive into grace and what it means to incorporate that in your life. Grace, to say the definition once more, is the ease of your interaction with your surroundings and with other people. As you've heard me say before, beauty is a discipline for those who are not endowed with it by God. We must create beauty for ourselves. And this oftentimes provides us with a better understanding of who we are, and it teaches us the fine art of living life. What I mean is that learning grace has a lot of long-term benefits. It's not just about being graceful. So grace is the direct product of discipline. And what gives beauty, coupled with indifference, it's divinity. It's this eerie kind of awareness that all at once is nonchalant yet completely mesmerizing. It's the person that's talking to someone across the room, giving them their undivided attention. They're giving somebody else a side hug over here, and then they're pouring themselves a glass of wine. It's the person that swiftly redresses after a cup of coffee. The weightlessness of the jacket draping onto their arms, their bag casually thrown over their shoulder, and a book betwixt two fingers. Do I sound crazy? I mean, I pay attention. This is what graceful people are like. Everything seems to be part of some kind of beautiful, artful performance. Now, in this video, I have delineated 3 tiers of grace. The first tier, which is the lowest, is social grace. The second tier, which is spatial, and the third tier, which is mastery of time, the highest. So, social grace is one of the most easily accessed forms of grace. It is achieved by being around people a lot. And you can see this kind of grace in children that have a very big family and have siblings. Children with frequent access to family members or siblings are not nearly as socially awkward. They just instinctively understand bodily etiquette, and they generally do not have as many issues with intimacy. As an only child, and thousands of miles away from any immediate family, most of my immediate family, I can attest to this. I am the person to step on your toes when I go to hug you, to slam a delicate wine glass on the table. I can't play fight because I have absolutely no gauge of the force I'm using or the pain that I'm causing. I am not witty, I'm not funny because I've had nobody to really nonchalantly banter with. I never had grace because I was a very lonely kid. One of my most important connections to the world was stifled at a very young age. And I found out, because you become more conscious of your actions whenever you're older, I found out in my teens that I was just this complete force of destruction. I had no sense of self or my surroundings, and the only thing to kind of bounce off of was me, aside from my parents. I always felt like I was walking into a foreign country and I couldn't speak the language. Anyway, being around people frequently is the best way to practice this most common form of grace. Now, the second tier is what I call spatial grace. It is the grace of interaction with objects and your surroundings. This one takes way more exposure, in my opinion, and I think most people neglect this kind of grace. To me, it is the most artful form of the 3. It's also on a higher caliber than social grace because today's society doesn't really care too much about teaching etiquette. And to be fair, the etiquette I'm talking about, was usually reserved for the upper classes anyway. The etiquette that I'm talking about is more than just knowing how to use a knife and a fork, okay? It's the poeticization of your movements. Now, to give an example of this, I want to mention one of my favorite movies by Lars von Trier, Nymphomaniac, part 1 specifically. So Joe, the main character, is enamored but very cold towards a man named Jerome, who she met in her youth. She eventually falls in love with him later on, despite her best intentions, and she describes falling in love with him as seeing an order in his mess, and the mess being his desk and the various objects and books and things, office supplies that are kind of sprawled all across it. She has a particular fascination with his hands and the objects that are treated by them, so much so that she wants to become one of these objects. She wants to be touched, influenced by his grace. She wanted to become a part of some kind of unspoken, sophisticated conduct that Jerome followed. She, in a very beautiful way, she described it as careless elegance. Grace is what she called careless elegance. Anyway, spatial grace is a very curious way with objects. People who have this kind of grace handle even the most foreign of objects with ease. They are always delicate and always deliberate. So for social and spatial grace, practice makes perfect. The more you expose yourself to someone or something, the easier your interaction with it will be, and the more room for stylistic flair there is. That's a very important one. You have all this discipline, right? And then you get to let go. Think about it, let's say, the difference between using a pencil for the first time versus years after. When you first use the pencil, you're kind of awkward with it. You don't really know how to handle it. You're holding right at the tip or too far away. But then years after, you're doing tricks with it. You're swiftly moving it around back and forth. You're turning it around to use the eraser and then back again. And do you know what I'm saying? Exposure and repetition is the key to grace. These two kinds of grace. And now I want to ask you a question. I want to engage you guys a little bit. When you hear the word grace, I want to know, what is the first image that pops into your mind? A ballerina, right? A long-legged, pink tutued ballerina or dancer. Am I wrong? I feel like we are almost conditioned at birth to put that image and that word together. And I never really asked myself, why a ballerina? Why a dancer? What is it? Their movements are graceful. Their movements are effortless. No. We don't do that here. We dive deeper into things on this channel. The reason why we associate grace with ballerinas is because learning how to dance the ballet is very, very difficult and requires years and years of practice. Ballerinas are very ascetic. For that level of control over the body, it requires rigid discipline. Every muscle must work with their counterpart. You're tensing up one part of your body and releasing another. Dance is conquering the body. Grace is conquering the body. That's what we're here to talk about. They practice technique, and this is very important. They practice technique until their body makes it second nature, and that mastery of movement begets grace, and then eventually stylistic flair. Whenever you teach your body to move in a certain way and it becomes second nature, you can focus more on putting a little bit more of you in it, a little bit of that perfection that has to do with your personality, and you can put your spin on it. Artists have said time and time again that you need to learn the rules first so that you can learn how to break them. That is an extremely important concept, especially when it comes to grace. People who are not naturally born with grace need to do this. You need to force your body into submission in order to break free from it. Do you understand? It's about conquering the body so that you can transcend it. The body can have control over you if you let it, throwing you around like the bag of bones that you are. Clumsiness is a crime, in my opinion, and I can say that because I am a repeated offender, and there's nothing fun about it. We're not Fergie in love over here. There is nothing good about allowing the body to heave and fumble and tremble under the pressure of itself. Allowing your body to control you is surrendering to the earth, your id, and laziness that can only come from a society that has too much time on their hands and too many delivery services. Lastly, I'm someone who is very all over the place So concepts on this channel can really get thrown around from video to video, which is why I'm repeating this concept here. In my journey towards aestheticism video, I discussed mastery of time as grace. Mastery of time, for those who have not watched that video, is becoming so removed from society's rigid paradigm that you exist on a plane all your own. A plane that is above everyone else. And since time tethers all things in our world, to cut it cleanly makes you a master. It makes you graceful. Now, the association of time with grace is one of personal observation. And aside from the rather vague description I just gave you, there's only so much more I can say about mastery of time and grace. But what I will say is that it is the crowned jewel of the graces. It is the highest tier. It is where indifference and grace elope. Mastery of time is the highest saturation of divinity present in human beings, because it applies the nonchalance and careless elegance of the other graces to the idea of life itself, not its content. Mastery of time is the last step on the ladder leading to God. Grace and its varying potencies is a very powerful means of relieving ourselves of the burden of mortality, of this corporeal stalking. Grace is crucial to becoming ethereal because it helps you transcend the barbaric and the prodigal, all the afflictions and wastefulness that is encouraged by society. Not to incorporate too much religious rhetoric here, but the flesh is weak and subject to all the temptations that the earth provides. But grace is the lighthouse that brings the captain to shore safely. Discipline, exposure, practice, repetition of movement, and experience are all things that distract the body so that our soul can lift out. Grace compels you to reach higher, to resist the temptations of mortal delicacies and vices, to look upon them with disapproval, and to thirst for more seraphic delights. Okay, thank you for watching this video. Thank you if you got this far. So, this series will soon be coming to an end. I anticipate I'm going to do one more video here. However, I have an idea. I want to address the needs of the audience, as I'm aware that you guys really enjoy this series. I have an idea to make another series of how to be ethereal, but more so like tips and tricks, little things, little details, and to be a little bit more lighthearted. So let me know if that's something that you guys would want to see, if that's something you guys would like. All right, like, subscribe, leave a comment, turn on the bell for notifications, and I will see you guys next week. Goodbye.